jumping on the bandwagon to talk about The Last of Us 2. Or, more exactly, how to use it as an example of how storytelling in video games is different than it is in books or movies, and to talk about some of the worst offenses in this particular game. Spoilers for The Last of Us and The Last of Us 2. You've been warned. For what it's worth, I'm not going to talk about queer representation or transgender tokenism as creating backlash for this particular game. What I am going to talk about is why people are pissed off about what happened to Joel, as an example of the differences between video game storytelling and the storytelling one finds in traditional narratives and other media. I'm also going to be talking quite a lot about the bad science fiction in The Last of Us 2 and how the lazy, research-free writing affects the gameplay. While I am talking about The Last of Us 2, the problems are similar to what is found in many games that are story-driven. There's a lot of bad writing in video games, even in the best of them. The Last of Us 2 is, obviously, a sequel to The Last of Us. The Last of Us was supposed to be some kind of revolution in storytelling and video gaming. To me, not so much. It was cliched. The world has ended and you've got to get something medical across dangerous terrain. I think the first time I read that story, it was called Damnation Alley. It was written in 1969. The Will Smith movie, I Am Legend, is another recent example of the exact same story as told in The Last of Us. Which is to say, yeah, I wasn't impressed by The Last of Us and its story. Plus, really, another zombie movie or game where man is the real monster? That also goes back to the late 60s. How is it possible that another repetitive, derivative zombie story could be credited as exceptional? There was nothing original about The Last of Us, so I wasn't expecting too much from the story of The Last of Us 2, and what I got was under my expectations. I'm going to start off by talking about the lousy science fiction of the game. First, because I'm one of the people for whom story really affects the way that the game is played. There are a few things I find worse that a game is doing something that's just plain stupid, but because the video game designers didn't create a story strong enough to support the play, you're just doing stupid things in stupid ways to stupid ends. I hate that. Like, a trite and somewhat cliched but common way this happens in games is, there's like a big pit ahead, and there's a boss in there, and there's nothing you can do about it. Any intelligent person in the world is going to try to figure out a way to fight the boss on different terms or go around it, but that's not even possible. The same is true of almost every game where also you've got these like indestructible buildings, and there are enemies inside those buildings, but you have to go through them, and they're going to pour out and surround you right when you get into the center of the space. It's crude, and it's obvious, and it's repetitive. Sometimes, though, it affects the whole game through the storytelling. The Last of Us 2 is a particularly bad example of this. The pivot upon which the plot of the game turns is that after having delivered Elle, who is the only person in the world known to be immune to the disease destroying human civilization, well, the Firefly scientists, to study a vaccine or treatment or cure, decide this means killing Elle. And to prevent Elle's death, Joel goes on a murderous rampage. If you don't know who Elle or Joel are, it doesn't matter. The context that jumped into your head is exactly right. There aren't any surprises here. But here's the thing, and it haunted me throughout the entire game. That's absolutely, positively not what any scientist would do. In the game world, Elle is the only person who is immune to the disease that's destroying human civilization. The only person. Why would even any slightly intelligent scientist destroy their sole source of samples? This would not happen. Even if they were evil SOBs who were okay with murderous human experiments, they would first secure additional samples. Elle would be the most important person in the world to them. For quite a few years, until they had other people immune to the disease to study at the bare minimum. Because science doesn't work that way, Joel has no reason to kill the scientists, which means that Abby and Elle have no quarrel. The whole story revolves around something scientists would not do. Not even for ethical reasons, but also for those reasons, but for entirely practical scientific ones. For me, worse than that, though, is that the authors of the game don't even understand what they've done. They create this false moral equivalence. The game tries to create moral tension between Joel and the people who wanted to kill Elle. But there isn't any. Joel saved Elle from child-murdering animals. No matter how much they blather on about saving humanity, that's bullshit. The dilemma is not, should they kill Elle to save the human species or let it die, but how to save humanity without becoming child-murdering fascists. which is to say that Joel was right to kill them in defense of Elle. If that means Abby, the surviving representative of these wannabe child-murdering fascists, she's just wrong. There's no moral equivalence. None. But damn it, this movie is going to be about the cycle of violence, and screw a coherent storyline where humans behave as humans actually would behave. Screw that. Who cares if Abby is a goddamn child-murdering maniac? She sees other human beings as property to be chopped up in some farcical scientific endeavor? Maybe she's reading out of the Mengele playbook. This lack of thoughtfulness penetrates every layer of the game. It's like it wasn't made by humans for humans. Seriously, 5 years after the virus has shown up and wiped out human civilization, where are all the farms? Hello? Humans would not be able to live on the remnants of the old world for very long. People would need to go back to farming, ranching, and fishing. Before the modern world, up to 90% of the human population were agriculturalists, ranchers, and fishers. 90%. It's like The Last of Us 2 thought that, hey, Fallout got it right about how people are going to be living after civilization's destroyed. Years and years later, they'll still be rummaging around ruins, looking for bullets and cans of food, but, not trying to recreate a new civilization. And the people who hunt Elle, oh my god, terrible writing. Because, let's face it, she's a death machine. So, if you're telling a story where the people are supposed to behave in believable ways, a good story, when do the people hunting Elle get scared of her? But her enemies are always confidently, hell, arrogantly hunting her down when anyone with half a brain in their heads knows it's the other way around. She's hunting them. But they never show the least bit of concern for their safety amongst the near constant stream of mewlings from Elle. Not only do the antagonists never realize that Elle is Batman, Elle never realizes she's Batman. Ugh, such bad writing. It really hurt my enjoyment of the game. The human enemies with boundless reserves of morale who never go, hey, wait, if she's killed like 20 or 30 of us, isn't it arrogant for me to think I'm going to be the one that takes her down? It's like the video game studios have no idea how humans behave. And right now, if I was someone like Jim Sterling, this is the point where I point out that the toxic bro culture of the game industry is at fault for a lot of this crappy writing. I am not stunned that the billionaire frat boys who run the big studios are more interested in lovingly animated blood splatters and disembowelments than in creating recognizably human characters in their game scripts. But I'll leave that critique in Jim's capable hands. You listening, Jim? Make a video about toxic rogue culture sabotaging storytelling and video gaming. About 10 hours or so into the game, Elle kills a pregnant woman, and it's so sad. She's killed like dozens of people by that time? Maybe hundreds? Did she not imagine some of them were parents? Seriously? I would further argue, as a storyteller, it would be more horrifying if Elle, upon killing a visibly pregnant woman, had no emotion at all. It would better fit with the narrative of the gameplay furthermore. At any rate, this now plays into the reason why people were so chuffed that Joel gets it and how he gets it, and moves on from how The Last of Us 2 is a badly written game to the difference between video game writing and writing in traditional narratives. Joel's death at Abby's hands has bothered a lot of players and some critics, and yeah, they've got a very good point. I could add my voice to the list of people who observe that Joel is an objectively terrible person and, well, live by the sword, die by the sword. What that line of reasoning fails to acknowledge is the reason why people kill Joel is stupid. The scientists would not have tried to kill Elle, so there would have been no reason for them to kill him. Or, if they did try to kill Elle, they became top-tier fascist assholes, and killing them to save Elle was justified. They're just clowns who had it coming. But even ignoring the lazy, research-free writing, this is one of the key differences between a book and a movie and a video game. People don't spend 20 hours controlling a book or a movie's protagonist. Yeah, okay, Joel's an objectively horrible person, but through long association with playing as him, gamers identify with Joel. Listen to the words that people use. No one says, Joel finished The Last of Us. They say, I finished The Last of Us. On the other hand, no one says, I blew up the Death Star. They all say, Luke Skywalker blew up the Death Star. This is a crucial difference between video games and traditional narratives. Even when the player has no control over the story, they identify with the game in a different way than they do with a book or a movie or a TV show. Indeed, I'd argue that identification is the only reason why gamers put up with the derivative, repetitive storyline for their weird and bad writing. The vicarious identification with a video game protagonist is different than with a book or a movie. In large, when watching a movie or reading a book, there's a sense of observing. In a game, it's a sense of doing. So, by killing Joel, the game is basically saying fuck you to the players. The first game, The Last of Us, spent a lot of time not only giving Joel a character arc towards redemption, but put the players in the position of playing him for long stretches at a time. Killing him struck at the implied deal inside of the world of video games, the personal identification between a player and the protagonist. Which isn't to say you shouldn't kill characters or even playable characters from previous games, but you've got to be aware what you're doing with it, which is where The Last of Us 2 really fails. It does not acknowledge the connection between the player and the character, in this case, Joel. It goes, well, we'll use this personal connection to make you feel like crap, kill a character for a stupid reason, and then force you to identify and play the person who killed Joel. Psych! Because, yeah, they make you play Joel's killer, Abby, which causes dissonance because now the player is forced to identify with Joel's killer, a character who they hate because of Abby's role in Joel's death. And also possibly because she's hateable. She's a fucking fascist who wants to kill children. So they ended up killing Joel in a confusing way that ignored the many hours of personal association the players had with the character. And then they treated Joel like a character in a movie, not a video game. They ignored the personal connection that one forms with video game protagonists, which made playing Abby hurtful because, really, the players just wanted her dead. So even if you think that's cool and you like playing Abby, that it was fair of them to do it because it created a genuinely gripping moment, it's also fair to acknowledge that it was way too rich for a lot of players. You might not agree, but it's fair to understand why they're upset at this turn of events. And the way these two ideas play out in the game is very grating. After creating a stupid scenario and populating it with unbelievable world and cardboard characters, the game then attempts you to make you feel bad for the game you actually play. It creates this badass violent gameplay where we, the player, is vicariously thrilled to Elle's badassery. Then it intersperses it with cutscenes where we watch the characters react, and react very poorly to the violence the game makes the players perpetrate. It switches between having these cinematic cutscenes, like a traditional narrative, in a video game in a pell-mell fashion. It proposes to make you hop between enjoying the usually excellent gameplay and these vignettes where you're told to feel sad that you played the game you bought. How dare you enjoy the fun game they made? Worse for me is the pretension that this is deep storytelling. The banal premise, more zombie plagues where humans are the real monsters, combined with a stupid setting where, no one gets around to trying to fix anything and they're living in some sort of proto-Fallout lifestyle, picking through other people's garbage, and do nothing but endlessly patrol with suicidal bravery to kill your character. But it's deep because it has vignettes where your character cries because you played the game as designed. Which is to say that, yeah, the storytelling in the game is awful. You can't take it seriously. You shouldn't take it seriously. You can't claim to have a brilliant story when it's not even a good one. That it's derivative and poorly executed with unbelievable scenarios and no psychological plausibility. Yet it's being praised for its amazing storytelling, which just leads me to believe that game reviewers are, as a group, uncultured cretins who haven't read any good books or seen any good movies. Or perhaps their brains are so rotted that they're incapable of serious critique. But some of the fans noticed. And while it's true that a few local anti-fans have attacked the game for its lesbian protagonist and trans inclusionism, what? It feels to me that the outlier criticism about A's gayness and the trans character being magnified by the game's creators, the Naughty Dog studio, to dismiss people's anger over the shitty writing in the game. They're painting with these very broad strokes to cover up any criticism of their game, co-opting trans and queer issues to protect themselves from the consequences of their lousy writing, and that's despicable. If I were in a position to fix the problem, I'd work to clarify the differences between narration in a game and traditional media with an eye to incorporating those differences into the storytelling mix. First, of course, I'd say that everything needs to make narrative sense. Lots of games fail in its basic premise. And not just overall, everything needs to make sense in relationship to everything else in the game, or at least a kind of sense. None of this stuff where doctors want to chop up girls because otherwise the plot can't happen. The storytellers in these games need to go beyond a reason of convenience. This is done all the time in movies and TV shows and books, or at least in the good ones, and it really needs to start happening in the video game industry if they want us to take their storytelling seriously as art. Second, the storytelling needs to fit the gameplay. This is easily the biggest flaw of The Last of Us 2. Whether it's the maddening bravery of the people hunting down your exceptionally capable mass-murdering character, or the way the game wants you to feel bad about the lovingly crafted murder sim design, that crap needs to stop if you want people to take games seriously as a storytelling medium. Which is to say that The Last of Us 2 is not Schindler's List. It's an Expendables movie, except we're supposed to feel sad when the heroes kill all the people they kill, so it's not like The Expendables either. It's like we tried to make a movie that was both Schindler's List and The Expendables, which would be a terrible idea, so no one try it. Third, acknowledge the identification between the game's playable characters and the player. The reason why games continue to be popular despite their many storytelling flaws is this identification. But it's a power that should be used for good, not evil, and should be present in every stage of the story design. There's probably more stuff, but that's where I'd start. And those are my thoughts on the writing inside The Last of Us 2. I'm Kit Bradley, and this has been Writerly Talk. I hope you were at least slightly entertained or informed by my video, but if you want to bust my chops, leave a message below. I have some social media accounts, but I never really check them because social media makes me a little crazy and weird. So rather than deal with all the stress and unhappiness that causes, I'm really not checking it. Otherwise, I have a blog and you can go there and yell at me all you want if you want. Until next time, everybody be cool. You be cool.